is a Orach Chaim HaKodesh over here. The parsha begins, the Eila told us Yitzchak ben Avram. Seemingly the vav is unnecessary. We speak about the told us the children of Yitzchak ben Avram. Could say Eila told us Yitzchak ben Avram. What's the Eila? And is always a continuation. What did the previous parsha conclude with? The passing of Avram Avinu, that Yitzchak and Yishmael buried Avram Avinu. The Eila, now it's a continuation. What is the continuation? So Orach Chaim HaKodesh explains the Torah of all three of the Avos HaKadoshim, we know the least about Yitzchak. Torah speaks very little about Yitzchak. Torah tells us about the Akedah, the conversation between Yitzchak and his father. He asked him, where's the sheep? I said, La'olah, where's the sheep for the burnt offering? And then we speak about the story of the bracha. He had children. He didn't have children. He was a spaliel. How Hashem responded to his tefillah more than Rivka. And we know very little. And how Yaakov had taken the brachos, which were rightfully his. But about Yitzchak, we know very little. So you'd say maybe Yitzchak, in his own level, is not quite the equivalent of Avram and Yaakov. So the Torah tells us the Eila, as we know and we understand what Avram Avinu, to the degree that we can understand, and Avram was somebody who introduced HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the world, monotheism, and whatever he accomplished, the Eila told us Yitzchak ben Avram. Yitzchak is no less than Avram. That's what that vav reveals. The Eila. This is a continuum of Avram. Just as Avram was the Av at that special level, Yitzchak was the Eila, told us Yitzchak ben Avram. He's no less than his father. This is the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. So I asked the question, factually, Yitzchak was very special. He's the equivalent. So why does the Torah reveal this? As the Torah reveals to us aspects of Avram's life to appreciate who he was, why doesn't the Torah reveal to us aspects of Yitzchak's life so we should appreciate who Yitzchak was? So firstly, whatever the Torah tells us about Avram Avinu, it only tells us because that has relevance to us knowing who he was, because that has relevance to the makeup of Klal Yisrael, or the destiny of Klal Yisrael. Torah doesn't share with us information about Avram's life, which has no relevance to us. For instance, every daily activity of Avram, Torah doesn't reveal. What Avram ate for breakfast, the Torah doesn't tell us. It has no relevance to us. But whatever the Torah shares with us about Avram, that has relevance for us to understand who he was as the Av of Klal Yisrael. So whatever the Torah shares with us regarding Yitzchak, it also has to do with us understanding that he's the Av of Klal Yisrael. So what does the Torah share it? Now, what was the midah of Yitzchak? The midah of Yitzchak, his attribute, was gvura, was din. Everything he did was on the most perfect, precise level. If you would ask me, what is a malach? What is a malach? So the Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei Torah tells us what malachim look like. When a Navi has the dream and he sees the malach, what the malach looks like in the dream. But unless you're the Navi who experiences the malach, you have no idea what the malach is. You have no idea. The Ramchal writes that a Navi who prophesies even once for a moment, and he's connected to Hashem for that one moment, he's a different human being for the rest of his life. That experience, he's different. And we don't even really realize what it means different. He's touched. What does touch mean? Unless you're touched with that experience, you have no idea what that is. You have to be the Navi to understand what it means that the Malach communicates to you whatever Hashem is communicating. And the Ramchal writes that the level of attachment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the Malach is so overwhelming that a person does not have the capacity to survive. A person should die. However, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wills that he should live. That's why he doesn't die. It's like he's put on life support. When a Navi, because the Rambam writes, when a Navi has the Nevuah and he goes into a sleep state, he starts convulsing and then he falls unconscious. That's what happens. If you ever read about the electric chair, the amount of electricity that goes into that person, the person literally is fried, and they harness him to that chair because otherwise the bolts, he would just fall off the chair. Various parts of his body which actually would totally disintegrate, so they put a hood over his head just to keep him together. That's the intensity of that electricity that goes through his body. Lavdel elef havdolos. The Shekhinah attaching to a person. A human being only has a capacity to function within the physical realm. Within the spiritual realm, he has no capacity. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu wills he should live despite the fact of that experience. It's equivalent to life support. Therefore, that experience is something which only the Navi understands what that experience is. And its touch, he's a different human being from that time going forward. Different reality. So Yitzchak, his midah, his attribute is gvura, which is precise, which we can't even relate to what that means. So Yitzchak, in essence, was a malach. He lived his life like a malach. He was, in the words of Chazal, he's the Ola Tmima. The reason why he wasn't permitted to leave Eretz Yisrael when there was a famine was because just as the Chazal say, you're not permitted to take a chatos out of the confines of the Azar of the sanctuary because it becomes possibly Yotzei, it becomes invalidated. Yitzchak's innate Kedusha was such, the confines of Eretz Yisrael were the equivalent of the Azar of the sanctuary. That's the reason why, although he wanted to go out of Eretz Yisrael to go to Mitzrayim, as his father did, Hashem says, Shchon Ba'aretz Hazos, remain in the land, you can't go out. So in terms of who Yitzchak, we have no understanding. The Torah couldn't even describe who he was, because we're not at a level to understand what that means. Therefore, how does the Torah reveal to us who Yitzchak was? The Eila told us Yitzchak. As Avram was Avram, and we have an inkling, and we're able to understand who Avram was to some degree, Yitzchak is no less than his father. Why does the Torah describe who he is? Because it's not possible. Because we have no relevance. We don't have the capacity even to relate to what the level of Yitzchak was. Therefore, it's Ve'ela that Vav reveals to us Yitzchak is no less than what? Than Avram Avinu. That's the explanation of the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. I mean, I'm embellishing it and elucidating it to you and understand what this means. You know, people, they say, we find that Yitzchak, Rivka knew who Esav was. She never shared it with her husband. Many things. Yaakov goes, he buys the Bechorah from Esav, and Esav's about to take it. Rivka advises her son, you must take it immediately. And you'll impersonate Esav. You're going to pull the wool over your father's eyes. Somehow, Rivka should have shared with Yitzchak who Esav was. And the birthright belongs to Yaakov. And what she said to Yaakov, the Targum says, it's Alpi Nevuah. It's divine dictate you're supposed to go. If that's the case, she should have shared it with Yaakov, with Yitzchak, but she didn't. So people come up with all kinds of psychological and all kinds of evaluations of what the relationship with Yitzchak and Rivka was. So evidently, Yitzchak seemingly was not in the loop, chas v'sholom. So I ask these people, whatever you want to come up with. When Hashem introduces himself to Moshe Rabbeinu, who does he say? Or even to Yaakov, I'm Elokei Avram and I'm Elokei Yitzchak. Yitzchak was at a level that he was the Merkava. If Yitzchak was so out of the loop, so to say, and so out of touch, and he can be duped and fooled, firstly, how could he be one of the officers of Klal Yisrael? How could he be the location of the Shekhinah? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Anochi Elokei Avram, Elokei Yitzchak, Elokei Yaakov. Evidently, you don't get it. You don't get it. And there's a different way to understand it. Somebody once came to the Briskerov and wanted to give an explanation of one of the Ovos HaKadoshim. So he says, could you imagine, a person's a midget, a dwarf, and you have a person's a giant. And the midget, he has to have special tailor-made clothing for himself, because there's no such clothing on the market for dwarfs. So he takes his clothing, and he says he takes his frock, that's a dwarf, and he wants to put it on a giant. Could he put a dwarf's frock on a giant? Right? It's impossible. Your mind is so limited. You want to offer your explanation, understand Yaakov or any of the other Kadoshim. It's like a person who doesn't have an IQ, a person who's retarded, wants to figure out the theory of relativity of Einstein. You understand? You have no relevance to it. Well, he'll tell me the shape of the letters or the numbers look like who knows what. You understand? That's exactly our relevance to understand what the Ovos HaKadoshim was. The Gemara says, if we see them as malachim, which we have no understanding what a malach is, then we can class ourselves as bnei Adam. And if we think for a moment they are classified as humans, then we're donkeys. And not even the donkey, not even Chamor Shel Pinchas ben Yair, even at that level, not even at that level. So you see clearly, what's malachim? Could you describe what a malach is? Can't describe what a malach is. But you understand, they're a different realm. And here we're talking about the early generations, the Tanoim, the Amoroim. We have no inkling what they were. It's interesting. You study, you learn, and you think you know something. Rabbi Yitzchak Chon Inspector was known as the Kovna Rov, the chief rabbi of Kovna. He authored many svarim. And if you open any sefer, any one of his works, you read just the first page of what he writes. As he starts speaking, maybe half a page, he's already covered half Shas, just his references. And you understand what he understands, now you understand what you don't understand, or what you don't know. What he knows just with the stroke of the quill, when he just puts on that parchment, on the paper. If you've been learning for 60 years, just the proficiency he has, you wouldn't have. And here we're talking about the Kovna Rov, who passed away at the end of the 19th century. Clearly, he's a malach. He's an Adam. He's smarter than I am. If that's the case, you're a chamor. You basically, as they used to say in the old way, you left your brains at home. Or you never had any level of intelligence. That's the reality. By Yitzchak ben Arboim Shana Bekartos Rivka, Bas Besuel Harami Padna Rom. Yitzchak was 40 years old when he took Rivka, Bas Besuel Harami, the daughter of Besuel the Aramean, Mapadna Ran, who came from that location, Achos Lovan Arami, the sister of Lovan Arami, Lolisha. So the obvious question is, when a person is usually identified, he's identified by his father, the daughter of so-and-so. First of all, what do we have to know the location? We know exactly through the story of Eliezer where he went to locate her. Secondly, whenever the Torah traces the pedigree of a person, we don't mention the brother. And here it says, you know who she was? She was the sister of Lovan Arami. Why is that information important? So Rashi cites Chazal. We'll see in a moment. Ben Arboim Shana, Sheshavo Avram Mihar Moria, Nisbasa Shnol de Rivka. Now this is important. When Avram, immediately after the Akedah, Avram was informed through Ruach HaKodesh that Rivka was born, which is ultimately going to be the wife of Yitzchak. So we had mentioned when Eliezer was worried, Ulai no sovi isha lechas achroi. Maybe the woman is not going to come back. Avram understood. His soulmate was already came into existence. Rivka was born. Just has to wait 3 years. Then she'll be ready to be taken, and that's when Eliezer was sent to locate Rivka. Eliezer was worried. So what Hashem said? What did Avram say? Don't worry. Hashem will send his angel. We'll work it out. I'm not worried. That was Rivka. Yitzchak ben Lamed Zayin Shana, and Yitzchak was 37 years old. Time of the Akedah. Why? Sarah was 90 years old when she gave birth. She passed away at 127. So Yitzchak was 37 years old when Sarah passed away. Yitzchak got Akedah Shemesa Sarah Lamed Zayin Shana. Ki bas Sare Koisok Shenolad Yitzchak ubas Kufchav Zayin Shemesa Shenem Vayichai Sarah. Her Yitzchak Lamed Zayin Shana. So Yitzchak was 37 years old when his mother passed away. He waited 3 years and then he married her. So therefore he was 40 years old when he married Rivka Imenu. Bas Besuel be Padna Aram. She's the daughter of Besuel who came from Padna Aram. Achos Lovon. I want to show what kind of special yichus she had, right? Her pedigree. She bas Besuel. You know from the previous parsha, all the negotiations. Vachos Lovon, Padna Aram, El Hagid Shvocha. The Torah is sharing this information, this point. Who is Rivka Imenu? To speak about her praiseworthiness. Shoisa bas Rosha. She was the daughter of a Rosha. Vachos Rosha, the sister of a Rosha. Umekoma Anche Resha. And her location was a location where the people were evil. She did not learn from their ways. She was a tzaddiker. She was worthy to be the patriarch, the matriarch. Okay. Over here, the Gemara tells us in Bava Basra, we speak about marrying a woman. So it tells us that Aaron's wife was Elisheva bas Aminodov. Elisheva bas Aminodov, Achos Nachshon. She was the sister of Nachshon ben Aminodov, who was the prince of the tribe of Judah. So the Gemara asks, what do we have to speak? If you want to tell me who Elisheva was, she's the daughter of Aminodov. What do we have to speak about? Who her brother was? So the Gemara says that when you marry a woman, you should be bodik ba'acheho. You should see who the brothers are. Because rov bonim achar acherim. Very often, the majority of children, they assume the characteristics of the brothers of the wife. Therefore, you should go and you should do your due diligence to see who the brothers were. So the reason why Aaron's children were so special was because she was Achos Nachshon. Nachshon the prince of the tribe of Judah. Therefore, Aaron's 4 children were tzaddikim, that special level. So over here, you would say Achos Lovon. So here she's the matriarch. She's supposed to have the future patriarch. But with such a brother, it's not so simple marrying her. In fact, the Siporno explains that the reason why Esav was Esav, why he had all those tendencies, he was inclined to evil, was because he was what? He was a clone of Esav, of Lavan, except he outpaced Lavan. Lavan was an Arami. He was a charlatan. He was called white, but he was black as black, but he was called Lavan. As he says, he was cheating Yaakov when he shared with his wives. He cheated Yaakov endless times, hundreds of times. Whatever the deal was, he always reneged on the deal and redid the deal. Never kept his word. And what was Esav? Esav outpaced Lavan. Also, Ramois, Gozel Adas Abrios. He pulled the wool over people's eyes at a level not to be believed. That's the Sephardic. Chaim HaKadosh explains that the only reason why Yitzchak married Rivka was because he had no choice. There was no other woman that was qualified to be the matriarch other than her, even though she had this negative characteristic. That's what her brother was Lavan. but he had no choice. That's the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. So that's what the Torah is telling. Although she had a brother, Lavan, and you have this Achilles heel there, it's a problem. He had no choice. He had to marry her. So according to the Chazal, even though he understood that, but his father already had the divine communication after the Akedah, that Rivka is his wife. He had no problem. I mean, we had the story of Chizkiel Melech Yehuda. Initially, he didn't engage in procreation because he had seen through his Ruach HaKodesh he's going to have a son of Rosha, Menashe. And initially, he didn't want to have children. And although his wife was the daughter of Yeshaya Novi, he had Menashe, one of the worst kings we've had. He was a Rosha. So we see he had an obligation to marry and procreate, although he had the best yichus, the pedigree. He was from Malchus Beis David, and his wife was from Yeshaya Novi, Yeshaya's daughter, but yet they had a Menashe. The same thing here. The divine decree was that matriarch is Rivka. When Sarah Mena passed away, Rivka was designated to be the wife of Yitzchak. But she has a brother, Lavan. Doesn't make a difference. That's the way Hashem wants things to manifest itself. The whole concept of Esav son of the Yaakov, the balance between good and evil, that emanates from Rivka. And she had to have that brother to have that representation of evil, because that's the counterbalance to Yaakov.
Rabbi?
By the Bris Bein Absorim, Hashem said to Avram, take certain types of animals and species. Egel Mishuleshes, the Torah v'gozel. Take a Torah and a gozel. Torah is a dove. Gozel. Gozel is like a pigeon. Gozel. So each one of these species represents one of the godlus, according to the Midrash. What is Torah? Torah is, the Yonah is Klal Yisrael. Yonosi Tamosi. As the Chazal tell us, the dove only has one mate. It doesn't have multiple mates. Klal Yisrael is Yonosi. Is the also the Yonah, the dove, when you slaughter it, it doesn't fight the person who wants to slaughter it. It extends its neck and allows itself to be slaughtered. Klal Yisrael give their lives al Kiddush Hashem. So Klal Yisrael have the characteristic of the Yonah. Who's the Gozel? Gozel is the Esav. Shegozlim das abrios. The Gozel represents Esav, that they have the ability to be Gozel das. They mislead people. They have the guile, the level of guile. It's impossible to know who they are. And by the time you know who they are, it's too late. That was his level of deception, Esav. We find later, when Yaakov had found out that Esav's coming towards him with 400 men, there's all-out battle. This is going to maybe fight for till the death. He said, "Hatzlein no mi miyad ochi miyad Esav." He prayed to Hashem, "Save me miyad ochi miyad Esav." So the Medrash tells us, Yaakov, nobody understood Esav the way Yaakov understood Esav, but yet he was concerned. When you fight your enemy and you know who he is, the more you understand who he is, the more you be cognizant not to lose focus for a moment. Because if you lose focus for a moment, your enemy could kill you. Yaakov understood who Esav was. He was concerned that when he meets Esav, Esav has the ability to incapacitate him. He can exude such a level of warmth and give Yaakov confidence that he's his most intimate friend. Esav had the ability that he could actually incapacitate Yaakov. And Yaakov will lose the sense and understanding how evil Esav was and what his intent was. You understand? Yaakov, knowing it, was concerned that just being exposed to him, he'd lose it. He'd lose that understanding. He wouldn't have it. Unless you knew who he was, you didn't know who he was. How did Rivka know who Esav was? And how she knew who he was? Because the Navi told her. If not, even Rivka, who grew up in that house, wouldn't have been able to understand who her son was. That was his level of deception. Only because Hashem revealed it, that's how she knew. So therefore, humanly, it was impossible to know. And because the nevuah was to, as I always say, when she was pregnant, she had all these issues, all this agitation in her womb. She had tremendous pain. She thought she was going to die. What do you think? She went to Shem, who's a Navi. You don't think Avram was alive? You don't think she went to Avram to get a reading on it? Avram's a Navi. But a Navi only knows what Hashem reveals to him. She goes to Avram, he says, I don't know. Hashem has the shid with me, what's going on here. She goes to Yitzchak. Yitzchak was a Navi. What does Yitzchak say? I don't know. So why didn't Avram know? Because Avram passed away 5 years before his time, not to know. So Hashem's definitely not going to share it with Avram, what's going on. She goes to her husband. He's a Navi. Why didn't Hashem communicate it to him? You know why? Because he's not supposed to know. Because the whole scenario of the brachos of Yaakov's Esav's son of the Yaakov had to evolve. If, as I said, if Yitzchak would have known who Esav was, he would have cursed him. That whole situation would have never come about. So Yitzchak had to be kept in the dark. So when Shem revealed it to Rivka understood that this nevuah has to be kept under wraps. She can't share it, not with Avram, for sure not, and not with her husband. Why not with her husband? Because if her husband was meant to know, and he's a Navi, want Hashem share with Yitzchak. Evidently, Hashem wants him to be in the dark. He should not know. And Esav, being who he is and was, it is impossible who he is unless Hashem tells you who he is. Rivka was privy to know that. But to figure it out, it does make this, what need do you have? Din, precision, humanly, it's impossible to make that evaluation or detect what Esav was. Vayeta Yitzchak Lashem lenochach ishto. Yitzchak prayed Lashem opposite his wife or on behalf of his wife. Why? Ki akori. Because she was barren. V'yosalo Hashem v'ta Rivka ishto. And Hashem responded to him, and Rivka became pregnant. Ta Rivka ishto. Let's see Rashi. What's the yetar? Yetar is an expression of tefillah. Hirba v'hivtzit b'tefillah. It's a very strong expression of tefillah, of supplication. It was with an urgency. V'yeta lo, nispatsev, nispayis, nispato lo. Hashem was agreeable, was appeased, or the word seduced to him. Means with an intensity. Next Rashi. Yitzchak was in one corner praying. And Rivka, that's lochach ishto. He prayed opposite his wife, not on behalf. She was in one corner, he was in one corner, she was in the other corner. V'yosalo, Hashem answered him. Why? Lo v'lo lo. Hashem responded to his tefillah, not to her tefillah. Shein doma tefillah tzadik ben tzadik l'tefillah tzadik ben Rasha. You cannot compare the supplication of a tzaddik, the son of a tzaddik, to the tefillah of a tzaddik ben Rasha. Lefichach lo v'lo lo. Therefore, when Hashem responded, it wasn't lacking in Rivka, but because Yitzchak had more clout, because he's tzaddik ben tzaddik. Therefore, Hashem responded to his rather than to hers. Speak about schusavos. A person can be a great tzaddik, and somebody the equivalent, but one person has it over the other because the other person has this spiritual clout. Yitzchak had spiritual clout. You know, he was the son of Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was who? He's the one who introduced God to existence. He's Mogen Avram. Rabbi Chosman. Avram was the ultimate. So this is the son, the prince of that prince, the most special prince. We find that who oversaw the building of the Mishkan? Betzalel. Now, Betzalel, how old was he when he oversaw the Mishkan? He was 13 years old. And the Torah tells us that he was Udea Litzarf Osios. The Gemara says in Brachos, that he understood the conjugation of the letters of the Aleph Beis, how the world came into creation. And he was infused with divine understanding, because without that level of understanding, he couldn't oversee the building of the Mishkan. B'Tzalel. And when the Torah identifies B'Tzalel, who is he? As we said, whenever you identify a person, it's always the son of the son. By B'Tzalel, we trace his pedigree back to his grandfather. B'Tzalel ben Ur ben Chur, Lamati Yehuda. He is the grandson of Chur. And Chazal ask a question. Why it's B'Tzalel ben Uri? Why are we tracing his pedigree back to Chur? Who is Chur? Chur is the son of Miriam. The last mention of Chur in the Torah is when we fought Amalek. It says that Moshe was sitting and Aaron held up one hand of Moshe and Chur was the other. Right? And when he would raise his hand, we'd be victorious. We lowered his hand, we started to lose the battle. That was Chur. Chur was the son of Miriam. That's the last mention of Chur. What happened to Chur? By the Egel, he was the one who actually protested, and the Erev Rav killed him. He was killed because he tried to stop them from doing the Egel. So what did Chur? Chur, as a Jew, was the first one to give his life not to do Avodah Zarah. This is after Kabbalah Torah. So the Medrash says, Moshel Ma'ad David Omer. What is it in the Algos 2? You have a general. He goes to battle. He brings much victory, much glory to the king. And the king says, the general is going out to this great battle. When he comes back, I'm going to reward him handsomely. What happens? The general is killed in battle. But the king feels he owes it to the family. Although he can't compensate or show his appreciation to the general because he was killed, but he finds his relative. And he gives that gift to the relative. The commendations and whatever it was, the medals, the honor. But Saul being the grandson of Chur, that's what we're tracing his pedigree. But Saul ben Chur ben Uri ben Chur Lamati Yehuda. Since he was the grandson of Chur, therefore he was endowed with a special level of endowment that he was Yodel Tzarf Osius. Even at the age of 13, he had an understanding of how the world came about through a conjugation of the letters of the Aleph Beis. Because the Mishkan was a microcosm of creation, therefore it had to be infused with that same intent to have that same level of value. Okay? Why did Hashem respond to Yitzchak's tefillah? Lo v'lo lo. Who was he the son of? Avram Avinu. The one tells us in Brachos, the first one to refer to Hashem as Odon, as Adni, is Avram Avinu. He was the first one to recognize Hashem as master of the world, the master of the universe. So if that's the case, who is Yitzchak? Yitzchak is what? Is the son of Avram. Who's Avram? Avram is the son of that most special person who ever existed. There's a question which is asked. We have the Gemara in Brachos that Rish Lakish was identifying graves because he didn't want the Kohanim to pass over the graves and become contaminated. So Gemara tells him about the Basra, it was the Mora that he was marking graves. It was the Morris Machpelah. And he had to see from above exactly where Avram Avinu was. So Tosas has a question, when did we assume the status of Yisrael? At Sinai. Pre-Sinai, so what were the Ovos HaKadoshim? The B'nai Noach. It's Machlos of Shimei Yechoy and the Chachomim, where the Kivri Yakrim Metamim, where the grave of a non-Jew doesn't contaminate. Only upon contact or going over the grave doesn't contaminate. So Tosas asks, so why do you have to mark the grave of the Ovos HaKadoshim? The B'nai Noach. Even if the Kohen would pass over the grave, they don't contaminate. So Tosas explains that why is a non-Jew not, according to one opinion, it doesn't contaminate? Because it's Odom ki yomas ba'oel. Odom, an Odom who dies in a tent. Atem kriyim Odom, hem lo kriyim Odom. The Jews are classified as Adam. The nation of the world are not classified as Adam. However, Avram Avinu, even pre-Sinai, is known as Adam HaGodol. His classification, Adam HaGodol, the great Adam. So because he's Adam, that's why he contaminated, although he was a Ben Noach. So what does that mean? So who is Yitzchak, the son of who? He's the son of Adam even before Kabbalah Torah. Therefore, it's lo v'lo lo. Therefore, his clout, what he represented, Hashem owed it to him. Therefore, Hashem responded to his tefillah and not to the tefillah of Rivka. Not that Rivka in her own right was less, but because of who he was the son of, as Bezalel merited that special level because of his grandfather, that's why Yitzchak had special value in terms of his tefillah that he should be responded to first.